Welcome to Blaise the Trail podcast, bringing you authentic and vulnerable stories that will inspire you to breathe fire on this world and become your own hero. Here's your host, Blaise Hunter.
Hello, welcome to Blaise the Trail podcast. I'm Blaise Hunter, and I am a fertility expert. No, I don't help people get pregnant. This is a different type of expertise. I actually inspire women to birth confidence, to birth their books and business ideas, dreams, passions, and goals, as well as help them discover peace amongst infertility. After going through my own sets of traumas and tragedies, dealing with a rare disease, and experiencing 3 miscarriages, I decided to take charge of my life and not let life happen to me, but rather become the hero of my own life. I am not barren. I continually birth my purpose every day. So that's why I've created this show, to demonstrate how even though we all experience setbacks and disappointments, we still have a destiny to birth. We just need to blaze the trail and be expecting. This podcast will inspire you to lean into your hardships and allow them to be the vehicle that transports you into becoming the hero of your life so you can breathe fire on this world. This week's episode is called Sobering Resolve. And some points we'll cover are, is conflict resolution really achievable in this day and time? How one woman reached resolve within and got herself sober. We're going to discuss parallels of conflict and addictions and just doing things that brings us joy. And I have my friend here, Amy Cox from Compass Real Estate, to discuss this topic. As a Philadelphia native and 4th-generation realtor with advanced education and training in conflict, mediation, and politics, Amy provides her clients with insider knowledge of local real estate markets, expert negotiation skills, and a strategic approach to buying and selling real estate. She has a PhD in political science from McGill University in Canada and was a professor and director of a master's degree program in international peace and conflict resolution at Arcadia University. Later, Amy looked for a new challenge and became a real estate agent. Between her educational skills and training, teaching for 15 years, traveling to over 50 countries, working across diverse cultures, advocating for social justice and change for 25 years, and getting sober 9 years ago, there are very few situations that rattle her. She's experienced a lot of success since moving into real estate less than 2 years ago. With over $9 million in sales and 24 plus deals, Amy was awarded Top 2% Producer and the Shining Star Award. Welcome, Amy, to the show.
Thanks. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks, Blaise.
I'm so excited to chat with you. You have such a bullpen of experience and wisdom. This is just going to be fantastic to touch on different topics and really get to know you and how you've navigated all sorts of things in your life. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
So
sounds like you've had quite a story yourself. So that was really interesting to hear your introduction.
Yes, yeah. I think we all do. And that's the thing I really try and share is that, I'm not some special person that has been through some crazy stuff. I have been, but every single person in this world has different battles to go through and to rise above. And it's just interesting to learn about that because I feel like in this world, often with social media and just the way we are as a culture, we like to show the highlight reel. And that's not our life. That's only a portion of it. The other parts are the valleys, and we only achieve the peaks by going through the valleys. So let's highlight them and talk about them and help each other navigate through future valleys, don't you think?
Absolutely. I love that. That's a great way to think about it, for sure.
So before we go further into my questions, I'd just like to know a little bit more about you and your backstory and how you got here today.
So this is a really great question, and it's a funny one because it's a story for sure, just like what you were talking about. It's a story full of twists and turns and peaks and valleys. I was, as you mentioned in the bio, I was an academic before becoming a real estate agent. In one version of the story, I would say it's almost funny, like one parent was a teacher and one parent was in real estate, and I tried the teaching route and that sort of didn't quite fit, and now I'm in the real estate route. So there's the sort of one version of the story, which is, I think, like the influences that I grew up in and the where I felt attracted to. And so in some ways, that's how I ended up in real estate, was that I grew up around it. And was always fascinated by it, and it felt to some extent comfortable, challenging, but also like a familiar world that I could step into after teaching didn't quite pan out the way that, not even the way that I hoped, but just it just didn't quite work. It wasn't the right fit for me. So that's kind of the broad overview of how I got here.
Yeah, and so it's interesting because I think even our parents' generation and grandparents, you pick a career and that's what you stick in and you retire after like 40 years being in that profession. And I think we've shifted a lot where we really are putting an emphasis on, is it your passion? Is it bringing you joy? And you only find that out if you dabble in it and try it. And it's okay to try something and it works for a while, but then you close the book on that. It has an end date, an expiration. And so would you tell people, even if you are good at something and interested at the time, it's okay to transition to a new chapter, hey?
Absolutely. I love that. I would say that that's my journey in life, for sure, that there have been all kinds of things that I have had the opportunity to pursue or try out and experience them, and then decided that, okay, it's time to move on, and that's okay. Like, my identity isn't about what I do. It's about who I am, and I get to take that with me wherever I go. So I'm willing to go to all kinds of places and grow and be challenged, and not all of them are the perfect fit, or that, like you said, they only last for a short amount of time or maybe a medium amount of time. And so now that I tried the academic thing, which was never, thinking more about your question, it was actually never a goal of mine to become an academic. I was just very curious about the world and in particular conflict. So when opportunities continued to present themselves for me to go and travel and study and learn about conflict, I just kind of kept rolling with it. And it ultimately landed me getting a PhD at McGill in Montreal. And it was an amazing experience. And when I came home, I needed a job, basically. I mean, I just was like, I need a job. And a job opened up at where I got my master's degree. And it worked out. And so I took the job as director of this master's degree program in international peace and conflict resolution. And I had a great time. It was wonderful. I had so many amazing opportunities. I acquired and honed skills that I had never had. And then it kind of ran its course. And I decided that it was time to try something different. And then I really had to sit back, and that was a real process. It was a very painful process. Speaking of valleys and peaks, it was a real valley when I figured out that it wasn't going to work for me to stay in academia, and I didn't know what to do. And I thought, I cannot go back to school again. I was in school until I was 36. I was like, I cannot go get another degree. And so I really had to sit back and reflect, and I did a lot of talking with people, and I had some really amazing guides and mentors in my life that helped me really kind of hone in on, well, what can I do? What will speak to me? What are my skills and interests? And, how can I take from my past experience things that really worked for me and translate them into a new career? And so a lot of how I ended up in real estate was about recognizing what I like and don't like, and then finding a career that spoke to that. And so in some ways, that's how I ended up in real estate, was just exactly what you said, like letting go of an idea of myself with one hat, with one particular identity, with one career choice, and saying, I'm going to find something that fits me a little bit better. And you know what? I wouldn't say that real estate's the last stop for me. I have no idea. And it's great if it works out, that's fantastic. But I'm completely open and willing to kind of go where the energy flow in my life takes me. That's fine. Like, I'm in for the ride, and life is an adventure, and you only live once, so sign me up. I'll go where I'm moved to go, I guess.
I love that. That's a great, explanation of your journey in there. And I think, part of talking about this is that giving permission to people, creating more of a normalcy around you're not satisfied forever. Like maybe you're satisfied and excited about it and that's your place for a time, but maybe it's not forever. And maybe it is, but it's for you to decide as a personal choice. And I think I did a episode, my last week's episode on disruption of the system. And I think we have a system here where you're good at something, you go take your education, that's what you do. But that's somewhere in there, we grow up and we grow as a person and we transform. And maybe those skill sets and passions don't apply 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road. There's a newness to you, that wanting to learn more, do more, and it's okay. And I think you made a really good point there that your identity shouldn't be solely tied to your profession. Yes, it's part of me. I'm passionate about what I do, but it's not who I am. And too many people tie what they do and what they're good at to their worth, to their value, to their identity. Even my mom's going through that. She's a teacher. She's veering to the end of her career. She's planning to retire in the next little bit here. And she's left feeling, what do I do now? Who am I? What am I good at? Because all I've focused on is my career. And I think many people get stuck in that, and then they feel not good enough. They feel like they're a problem, like there's a problem with them, that they're not satisfied. And I really want to hone in on that with you, that you're not a bad person for being unsatisfied. It means it's time to find a new avenue, right?
Yeah. That is so funny, because I would say that when I decided that I was going to leave academia, the reaction from people around me was just shock. Like, how, why?
Yeah.
Why would you leave academia? Like, you have a PhD. You spent 8 years getting a PhD and you're just going to walk away? What are you going to do? Like, I don't understand. Why would you leave? It's, there's a lot of status and prestige around being a professor.
Yeah.
And how could I leave that for a career that requires a high school diploma? It was just mind-boggling.
Right? Backwards.
Why would you? And also this sense of there's all these people that don't have jobs, academics who want jobs and don't have them, and you have one in your home. Like, people really couldn't grasp, how, why? Why would you leave? Like, why can't, why are you so unhappy? What's wrong with you? It was definitely a challenge to kind of get to a place of comfort and be like, it doesn't, I'm not wrong. There's nothing wrong with me. It's just simply that I need to move on, and that's okay. And yet getting really comfortable with that discomfort, with
yes.
a recognition that it's all right. Like, it doesn't matter to me. Everybody else's opinion isn't relevant because they're not walking in my shoes. And I need to be happy, and that's what I'm after. And, it's great that if they're happy here, that they get to stay here, but there's something else out there for me, and I'm going to go figure out what it is.
That's wonderful. And I can feel you there, because, my husband and I took our daughter last year to the UK, and we took 6 months, and my husband quit his job. We had nothing to come back to in 6 months, but we felt like this is where we should go. This is what we wanted to do, and this was the time. And we had so much pushback, right? Like, what are you doing? That's a death wish on your career. Get back here. And you know what? Like, most of the time when people voice their reservations like that, it's because they're having reservations of their own purpose and path. And it's not about you. So when you can hone in that, like, it's not about what others say, it's whatever, if I feel resolute in my decision, then nothing else matters. And it sucks that you do have to face those questions from people, because why can't you just support me? It doesn't affect you one bit. So why are you even having all these reservations, right?
Right. I think that's so funny, because one of the things that I have learned in all of these various experiences and career paths that I've gone down is, and especially with conflict resolution, and this is, I can't say enough about learning this lesson, which is 90% of what comes out of other people's mouths has nothing to do with me. It's not personal.
Yeah.
Like, I take, it's like learning that most of this is about you. It's not about me. And I can look at it and I can acknowledge it, and I can hold space for you to have the feelings that you're having, but I'm actually not going to take it personally. I'm not going to internalize this as my problem, because really it's just about you. and exactly what you said, like all those people who probably their reaction to you leaving was like, you can't leave because I can't leave.
Yes.
You can't have that adventure because I would never let myself have that adventure, or I feel trapped, or I feel stuck, and therefore, like, nobody should go. It's not that conscious, of course, but it's just something that, like, I've become aware of, and it sounds like you totally had that experience as well, that awareness of, like, this isn't about whether or not I should go. This is about whether or not you should go.
Yeah. And, you still have to find that within yourself where that's all white noise. And you have your strategic circle that you go for advice and see your blind spots. But, like, those aren't the peanut gallery that are having reservations. It's your, it's your circle that you go to for wisdom and comfort and support and advice. But then I did experience a flip side to that, was that once I got to the UK, it was the people there, the new people that I met, that looked at me and was like, wow, you just came here with no plan other than to experience life, and you're going to see Stonehenge, and I live 2 hours away and I've never seen it, and every weekend you're off to a new country doing an experience, and I've never done that, and I live here. And as I was leaving the UK, I got all these messages from the new people I met there, like my family there, saying, you've inspired me to do things that I never thought of. I was mediocre. I never seized the day. And, like, I was getting messages on the plane leaving back to Canada saying, carpe diem, thank you for being here and inspiring me. And, like, yes, there's the peanut gallery with the reservations and how could you and why would you do this? But then when you do something like that, when you seize the day and take a hold of your destiny, you do inspire others to do the same and get out of that mentality where I feel trapped. Like, we're not. We can make it work. You just have to, figure out the formula and do it and take action, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And so we talked a little bit about that conflict resolution, which is amazing. Like, I'm fascinated with this because I've observed, even through my own experiences and my own triggers, where, we don't like conflict and we don't know how to engage in conflict. So when we do face conflict, I find the majority of the population go into complete sympathetic nervous system of fight, or freeze because we don't know how to work through it. We don't know how to sit there and respond and work through conflict to get a resolve. I think we just add to more conflict. So, do you think that with this world and the current status that you are and all of your background and training, can we actually teach people for conflict resolution?
That's a great question. I would say that the first thing I would take apart, which is language that we have used and to some extent continue to use, and it's sort of misleading, which is the idea of a resolution. It's not about resolution, it's about transformation. Resolution suggests that you can come to a conclusion and that conclusion holds indefinitely. Okay. And that's not what happens. Conflict is necessary. It's part of change. Like, you're not going to get to change without some tension, without conflict. So conflict is a good thing. How it manifests is where the challenge comes out, right? It's like if you don't have those tense moments with your partner or your business associate, like, you don't actually come to a new understanding of each other. So it's something that we need to value, but we need to learn how to do it in ways that are nonviolent. I would say it's a really big question to talk about violence. So I'm going to set that aside and just say that conflict transformation is about moving to a place of positive peace, which is that we have a sense of justice and we're moving towards justice and social justice and racial justice and economic justice. So positive peace is the goal for me in my life, and I think for a lot of for certainly the field of conflict transformation. Like I said, resolution is kind of a 90s term that we've moved out of at the academic level. And so can it be taught? You hit the nail on the head, which is our instinct when we are confronted with conflict is avoid, fight, flee. You have to practice. You have to learn the skill, and then you have to practice over and over and over again in order to get comfortable with having a new response. You have to learn to override your amygdala, which is your survival mechanism, right? So that's the part of us that gets activated, and your need to survive takes over, and then you don't think straight. And so we actually have to train ourselves to overcome the amygdala and actually be able to think through something. And so I would say that it's not about teaching as much as it's about skill building. It's really helpful to know the theories and the models and, the context through which conflict can be transformed in positive ways versus where conflict becomes overly destructive. So there is certainly that kind of more traditional teaching piece, but conflict skill building is really what we need to do a whole lot more of. And it is absolutely something that can be done. I'll share with you that right after the 2016 election, the environment in the United States changed quite a bit for many people. And it became an even scarier place for people. So, and where verbal attacks became a lot more acceptable, I think, is a fair statement, or at least that's the statement I'm going to make. And so a counseling friend of mine who ran a counseling program, a master's level counseling program, we came up with a little workshop called Interrupting Hate. And all we did for an hour was we got small groups of people together and we role played. And we would put everybody in the room into these, various scenarios where people were getting verbally attacked. And first of all, what people were able to do who were participating in the workshop was identify what is your go-to response. For me, it's freezing. Like, that's what happens. Like, I will just freeze. And if somebody says something, so whether somebody in front of me is getting attacked, I'm getting attacked, or even those moments where I'm caught off guard and somebody says something to me that is kind of like rude or inappropriate, it might not even be a huge verbal attack. It could just be like, or sometimes, a sexual, like some kind of overtly sexual advance or something that borders on harassment. I'll just clam up. I won't say anything. And then all of a sudden I'll get into the car and like my amygdala will calm down and I'll be so mad that I didn't say something. I'm like, can't believe I didn't say this. Here's all the things I wanted to say. and then I'm just like baffled, like, but where does it go? Where does all that, where does my ability to protect myself, whether it's, verbally or what have you, how does it like fly out the window? And so the workshop that we were doing was really about A, acknowledging what your default settings are, and then B, starting the practice of what does it actually look like. First of all, what should we be doing or what could we be doing? Like, what is the best way to manage that kind of overt verbal conflict and assault? And then starting to practice how we can integrate that into our day-to-day lives. So it's definitely something that we can do more of. I mean, in some ways I want to say it's easy for us to do more of because it doesn't require a whole degree. It requires some time, some willingness, and some effort. But it is, Quaker meetings, like this is, sitting in various types of religious communities on a weekly basis, like, they do it all the time, right? The Quakers, because they're particularly known for sitting in a circle and being able to walk through conflict in ways that are deeply respectful, thoughtful, and mindful. There's all kinds of ways that it can be brought to a society and given space to be used and I'm going to say transmitted or learned, I guess, by the people who are participating in it.
Oh, I love your language and your explanation of that. It's not a conflict resolve, but more of a transformation and positive peace. And I can totally relate with the freeze. And I go back and at night when I'm laying down, I'm like, man, I could have said that. And that is so good. Why couldn't I think of that? And, it just, like you said, it takes practice and it's going to be messy, right? Like, I've been on this journey of how to set boundaries and assert myself, and it has not been pretty. Like, you think in your head, oh, I've got these skills. I took this course. I'm going to apply them the next time I have an argument. And then all hell breaks loose, and it did not go as I thought it would be planned.
No.
Because we're all human. We're all triggered. We're going to have those moments, but at least like you said, intentional practice of that. And I like to tell myself and others, like, even if you took the 3-second rule, the 3-second pause, because I'm very immediately try and come up with a response with no thought, and it's all reactive. Like, man, just take the 3 seconds and take a second to breathe and think out your next response rather than getting yourself into a deeper trouble, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said about it being messy, because that's, again, it's that idea of like getting comfortable with the discomfort. And I say to people, like, would you get, when you first learned to ride a bike, did you immediately get on and like zoom away at 25 miles an hour with a 10 speed? No. It's like you probably fell off and scuffed your knee. Why do we think it's going to be different with skills that are emotional or psychological or, verbal, right? We know and understand that that's an expectation that we have if we're trying like a new sport or, a new exercise regime or a new class. But somehow we think, oh, well, now that I understand this, this thing, conflict and, how I respond, that we put an expectation on ourselves to get it right away. And it never does. I mean, it just doesn't, because it can't. We need to practice it, and we need to get more confident and build confidence around it. And that helps a lot too, I think.
Well, absolutely. And I'm in the middle of teaching my 7-year-old how to read. Many things. She's learning brand new life skills, academic skills, everything around, like brand new. And I'm like, you're never going to get it right the first time. It's a process.
Yeah.
You're going to fall and you're going to get back up. You're going to have good days and not so good days. But humans, like adults, we feel like those rules don't apply. We feel like our ego, like, I've learned this, I've aced it, I got this. Right?
Yeah. Totally.
But it is a process, and just having that commitment and realizing you're in kind of a, Brene Brown says, like, shame dance, right? Like, you're both going through things. So the people involved in this conflict, they're not going to be on their A game, and you're not going to be on your A game all the time. Like, maybe you are one day. Like, there was one time I distinctly remember being in conflict, and I was so zen, so calm, and I could say things without causing reaction, and I worked my way through the conflict, and I was like A+. But that happened like 1 out of 10 times, right? Other times it is like I did everything I know I'm not supposed to do. And I walked out of there being like, what happened? Like, I don't know.
Right.
But I'm learning and I'm applying it to the next time. And we've got to be gentle with ourselves too, but also hold ourselves to this new way of doing things. Don't revert back because it's easy just to yell at people and lash out and give the digs, right? Hold your line that, like, you have a more intelligent, eloquent way to work through conflict. That's what this is about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love it.
And making the goal about making progress.
Yes.
Not about resolution, but making progress, and whatever that looks like in the situation that you're in. At the collective level in the United States right now, it's about, for a lot of us, it's about racial justice and, economic justice. And so how can we make progress? And progress isn't linear, right? Again, to your point, it's like the expectation that we're going to do it once and we're going to get better and better at it, or that there aren't going to be mistakes or missteps or moments when we step backwards and repeat old stuff. Progress is not linear. It is, it's sometimes it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Sometimes it's 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that in the big picture we're not making progress. We have to just sort of continue, I think, to try to have a perspective where we look at things both in the short term, but also in the long term, like in the bigger picture of life. Like, are we doing better than we thought? Where are we? How do we evaluate ourselves and reflect on the progress that we think that we're trying to make? And do we have benchmarks that we can use to help us with that?
Oh, you're so right. Like, fantastic explanation of all. I think this is really going to help definitely me and my listeners, just because it gives us practical ways to improve ourselves, to grow, to progress as humans, and learn from what we've been through and what we're doing, and try and be the best versions of ourselves. And that, I was just saying this today on one of my other podcasts, is 80 is the new 100. If we mess up 20% of the time, don't focus on the 20. Like, you'd had 80% right.
Right.
shift your perspective on that and learn. And like, you may never get to 100. We're not perfect. Like, we're always going to have a mistake in the day. My whole podcast thing today on my video was try not to suck. Don't suck. Here's a tip, right? Don't suck. Right. We're going to make mistakes.
I love that.
Yeah, just don't suck throughout the day. You can suck 20%,
right.
But don't make it at 100 just by focusing on the 20, right?
Right. And knowing that you can reset at any time.
Yeah.
You have a tendency to think, oh, now the whole day is gone, or the whole, and it's like, no, you can reset the clock anytime you want. You can take, like you said, take three deep breaths and pause and choose to reset and change your perspective and kind of go, all right, well, what needs to happen now? Like, how can I sort of recover and keep going? And yeah, again, like you said, I love that. Try not to suck. I'm going to have to remember that. We say in my communities, in my world, we say progress, not perfection. Like, you're never going to get the perfect, so don't bother trying. Just aim for progress,
Exactly. I love it.
Find peace within that.
Awesome. So speaking of progress and transformation, you have stated that you've been sober for 9 years, and I believe that takes immense resolve within. So can you just walk us through that journey and what brought you out of it and how you got sober?
Sure. I mean, it's funny. I don't actually talk that much about this in my day-to-day life because it's such a personal experience.
Absolutely.
And yet I also came to understand when I was an academic and a teacher that it was something that I could share that would create a space for somebody else who might be struggling with alcohol or drugs to see themselves in my story or approach me and talk about it. So I sort of have at times talked about this. And I think I grew up in a household where there was a lot of drinking. And I would say that at a very young age, I started drinking. And I grew up in a house that had a lot of conflict as well, right? Hence, now you're burrowing down into the relationship between, conflict and conflict avoidance.
Mm-hmm.
So I started using alcohol very early on as a coping strategy to kind of check out of what was going on around me. And once I got accustomed to that as a way to manage all the internal conflict and the external conflict that I was in, it became my go-to. And then fast forward, I started drinking at probably 13, and fast forward, I got sober at 36. So, what's that, 23 years of using alcohol as a way to manage my feelings and actually just to not feel at all, and to deal with anything uncomfortable. I just drank through it. I was not a morning, noon, and night drinker. Some people are. I really used alcohol as a social lubricant. Like, that's what enabled me to kind of feel like I could fit in and feel like I could make friends and have confidence. And I never felt like I was an insider. I always felt like I was an outsider. And so that was one of the ways that I used alcohol to ease my discomfort. And as I got older, things that were once survival strategies become crutches, and they become a problem. And that's pretty much what happened with me. It was something that in some ways probably enabled me to get through a tough set of circumstances growing up, and then became this thing that stood in the way of me being happy. And so when I was finishing my PhD, it really became clear that I had lost a lot of friends, and I felt very alone, and I didn't have a lot of genuine substance like friendship and relationship in my life. And that's what I wanted, but I couldn't seem to connect with people anymore. And I felt like I was bottoming out emotionally. And so I had started going to like a community and a program where you talked a little bit about being brought up in a dysfunctional context with alcoholic or people who used drugs and alcohol as a coping strategy in the household, like as parents. And so I made it about that. Everything was sort of the fault, right? The blame and shame game. You mentioned Brene Brown. I love her. The blame game and the shame game. And I made it about everybody else but myself. And I made it about my family circumstances and how could they and how dare they. And yeah, I mean, there's some truth to that, right? I mean, my feelings were valid because all feelings are valid. And at the same time, it was not helping me to continue to blame my way through life, because at the end of the day, I was miserable. And so I figured out, I guess, in 2012 that I was the only person that was really going to end my misery, and that blaming my family and my circumstances and all these other events in my life that gave me resentment was not going to give me any kind of internal peace or serenity or joy. So I ended up, stopping. I quit drinking. And I got help. And I found a community of people like myself who I could share the experience with and talk through it. And I've been sober ever since.
Wow. Like, I appreciate you being very vulnerable there and sharing that. I know that's probably not something that you do share a lot, but very fitting for this episode of just working through things and being honest that we've all got things to work through, and it's okay. It's okay to even admit it, and it takes bravery, and you're human and you're still here. So that's a win. And like, I honor that. And incredible to not just be all academia armor and take conflict resolution training, but not apply it to yourself. Like, I think we do that a lot. We're experts. Like, you have lots of psychologists and mental health therapists that help other people, but our life is a mess, right? Like, we have to learn how to apply the strategies and be vulnerable and take off that armor of the intellect and say, hey, I also am human and have issues, and I can apply this to my own life, not just to others, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really amazing that you were honest about that. And, talking about conflict and, vices and going to something to help numb or help us in a situation, I think there are some parallels with conflict and addictions. And often people engage in conflict because they get triggered. And same goes with an addictive behavior. We get triggered and we go to that vice. And when we have conflict, we can sometimes tend to lash out to avoid being reflective. And many times with drinking or drugs, we use it to numb the pain of feeling. Like, what are your thoughts with that? I think you kind of said that already, but do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's the challenge is, and I mean, I'm totally going to pull from Brene Brown's TED Talk and say, because she said it so well, it was like, the problem is that when you try to numb the anger or the pain or the resentment or the grief, you're also numbing the joy and the happiness and the love. And so essentially you can't emotionally connect with anybody. And we tend to think, it's only when you're drunk or it's only when you're high or whatever it is, right? And the reality is, no, that's just a moment. Like, when you're constantly using substances to check out of life so that you don't have to experience the pain of it, like I said, you're also cutting yourself off from experiencing the joy of it, which goes back to your initial peaks and valleys, right? You don't get one without the other. And I think the other piece is that it can become, it's not just habitual. It's also, I'm trying to think of almost another word for addiction, because it's something that you basically can't live without. It's your best friend. It's your go-to. It's how you kind of get through life. And so I think people who are not addicts will still use those, will still use drugs and alcohol at moments to kind of celebrate or to kind of breathe, like, they're tools that everybody uses, and sometimes just about having fun or whatever. And I think addiction is just sort of another, it's a deeper level of that. It's kind of trying to get through life like that. And it's a really sad thing when we know people who are addicts or ourselves are addicts, and, or I know a lot of people who just can't get sober and stay sober. And it's tragic. It's very tragic. And I think that you're right. The other thing that you made me think of was, when I look back now, I am very clear that my interest in conflict and conflict resolution and my pursuit of studying it and traveling all over the world to experience it and see it was just an expression of my internal conflict. I couldn't fix myself, so I wanted to fix the world.
Wow.
And but you said it, right? You're like, this is a fairly common thing. It's like, social workers. I don't know if you know any social workers, but I know a ton of them. And they've helped me through some of the most difficult things in my life. And at the same time, I will say that seems to be a profession that's very predisposed to that sort of, I don't know how to fix my own life, but I'm going to work on fixing everybody else's. I don't know how to deal with my own pain, but let me try to help you with yours. And it's a giving and a caring profession, but often to a place where the people themselves who are trying to help others, they don't know how to help themselves. And, so how much of what we're doing in life is about, trying to respond to some of our own internal challenges, I don't
Absolutely.
know. It's more of a question than an answer,
No.
I was thinking about you in that moment, and I thought, I wonder if Blaise has ever had, challenges finding her voice in the world, because you're in broadcasting, right? So it's I don't think it's true for everybody. Honestly, I think everybody's path on the planet and their journey is different. But I had that moment of I wonder if Blaise would say that, she's ever has she ever had a challenge with, finding her voice in the world? And I don't know, it's an interesting thing to think about when we think about how and why people end up in the professions and the careers that they do.
You made me really just have an aha moment, because yes, I have struggled my entire life to speak up for myself, and I'm in a speaking profession, right? So
right.
I still struggle.
Yeah.
I become a beaten down puppy at 10 years old whenever I'm confronted to own my worth and stand up for myself every single time. And in the last few years, that has been my mission, is to step out of that beaten up little child and be like, no, you are level, you are equal. You can hold your head up high. Even if you're in the wrong, you're still equal. You're not in trouble. You are an adult. You have value. You have a voice. Start speaking it and owning it. And that's been my whole heroine movement, is that, yes, we're not perfect and we have flaws and we screw up a lot of times, but you know what? We have so much value, 80-20. I have 80% amazing in me that has depth and wisdom and layers and love, and I'm going to own that part of me rather than be ashamed of the 20%, right? And I'm going to learn from my profession, not just help others. And I'm sure many people have that feeling too, imposter syndrome, where who am I to help others when I can't even get my own stuff together, right? We always think that. And it's but you have a gift. And yes, your life isn't perfect and you have things to work on, but if you can help others, then that's your gift. So allow yourself to experience that and really step into it and own it, because I'm not knocking, psychologists and social workers, because, hey, we all miss the mark on one level or not, right? But if we can be reflective and say, hey, I'm really good at helping other people using these strategies and these skills and this education, then maybe I could apply a few of it to my own experiences and inner conflict, right?
Oh, yeah. I think, and you hit it on the head, I would say the one thing that probably differentiates those who grow and learn from those that tend to be more stuck is self-reflection, and we don't teach that. That's the really, I can't think of any, I'm trying to think of any scenario, any program that I've ever been in where, I tried to use some of that for sure. I think certain college classes have gotten better with it. I know that my sister teaches 4th grade and they try to do a little bit more, and there's not a lot of emphasis placed on it, but I think that self-reflective piece is essential to growth and progress and to being gentle. I love what you said about talking to your little girl, right? That's something that I've spent a lot of time doing as a sober woman, because I recognize so many of my wounds and injuries are about my little girl, or many little girls, whatever, that I, the things that when I'm talking to myself and I'm reflecting on my, whatever, on my day, on my life, on a certain experience, on a fight, whatever it was, that sometimes it's about my need to actually talk to that younger part of me that never felt supported, didn't feel worthy, didn't feel loved, and like coaching her, right? I'm like reparenting her.
Yes.
You know, in the words of psychologists, right? We'll pull from their language, reparenting my inner child. But you know what? There's a lot to be said for it, and it served me very well. And I think everything that you just said made me think of all of the ways that has been true of me being in conflict resolution, using a lot of the skills that I got in as an academic, and now using them in the real estate market, which is a business world, totally different than my academic and background and my previous sort of life, if you will, and getting into the business sector, which residential real estate is still dominated by women, but there's a lot of gender dynamics that go on in the business world. Academia tends to be a bit like it's a different world. And in the business sector, there's a lot of other themes that show up for me in my life today that weren't there 5 years ago, that are bringing me more opportunities to talk to my little girl again and sort of address different wounds. And I think that's been, having that reflective muscle to be able to stop and pause and be like, what is this about right now? Like, why am I so jacked up about this? Or like, why am I so triggered? What is going on for me? And then that it's the self-reflective muscle that allows me to step back and be like, oh, okay. Yeah. What's the aha moment? If that makes any sense. I feel
totally. I'm loving this dialogue. Totally. This is so awesome. And so you've really worked on resolve within yourself, and you've transitioned many times, and now you're a real estate agent and you're loving what you do. Do you think all of these basically valleys and these challenges have helped you in your career and your choices and where you are today and helping you discover more of your purpose?
Yeah, that's the purpose part is exactly what got me, because I careers are, some people, like we talked about in the beginning, a lot of, that one can attach a tremendous amount of importance to their career and others may not. I am still learning about myself in this regard. Purpose, however, feels a little different to me than career, because I may or may not be, my purpose and career may or may not be all that connected.
Right.
And that's okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they don't have to be.
Exactly.
Some people feel like you said this earlier and I thought, I don't remember what you were saying, but it made me think of a friend of mine, identity, I think. And it made me think of a friend of mine who's about to be an empty nester. And she's my age, I'm 44, and she has a 17-year-old, 18-year-old, and everyone's like, oh, you're going to be so happy, you're going to have your life back. And she was like, no, I'm going to have a complete breakdown, because all I wanted to be in life was a wife and a mother. And that's what so she happens to have a career, but that's what she feels like her purpose is. And so I mention that because I'm still searching. I'm still the career thing is kind of taken on this new color, if you will, in real estate. My purpose is to grow into my authentic self. That's the best I got going right now.
Yeah.
Perhaps more shall be revealed, no doubt, as I continue through my journey. But I feel like my purpose is to become my most authentic self. And therefore, whatever scenario, situation, career, relationship, location, wherever I am and whatever I'm doing, my orientation to the world, I wouldn't even say goal, but I could say goal, I guess, is to absorb, listen, learn, reflect, and integrate my experiences to help me be a better version of myself. And I think when I'm in the right space, head space, heart space, what I see is an opportunities to be of service. And that can be big opportunities or it can be small ones. Sometimes it's about knowing that I have a friend who's in need and I better call her back even though I have zero desire to pick up the phone. And, sometimes it's, helping out a neighbor or just trying to be a better daughter to my mom who's getting older, So I think being of service is my purpose, and being of service and my most authentic self, maybe those are two things, maybe they're one and the same. I suspect they're one and the same. is absolutely the result of, exploring every way of trying to change my external world and then finally getting clear that I needed to change my internal world. And getting sober is what shifted that moment from focusing on the external to focusing on the internal. And now I feel like I've got a little dose of both. And that's what has enabled me to show up differently in the world and be more of use to others and be in service,
Oh, that's just, yes, exactly. I think many times we confuse purpose with career or what you're doing. And sometimes it is. Like right now, my purpose is part of my career because that's where I am right now. But I'm also creating purpose as an attitude that my purpose means I have purpose. For 36 years, I felt like I never had a purpose. So I've shifted it. It's not become my profession. It's become my way of life, where I birth my purpose because I know I have purpose now, right? And I think that's shifting that perspective that you don't have to be on this grand journey to find your purpose, that you just wake up one morning and realize I am purpose,
Yeah, totally.
So that's just part of it. And I love this conversation of dipping into different insights and just what all you're providing. It's just fantastic. And we're running out of time here. So my final question is, what inspires you to keep pushing forward and, discovering your purpose each day, whatever that may be for you?
Happy, joy, and free. That's I know that happiness is not a goal, but being able to appreciate moments of happiness, you have to be open to seeing them. So being able to enjoy life and feeling free from resentment, from blame, from shame, from wounds of the past. So growth. But really growth is the end goal is to feel happiness, to feel joy, and to be free. I would say those are the three words that I cling to. And it's an inner drive. I can't explain it, but it is like I can feel it at the gut level that it just propels me forward, that I know that there's more growing to do to get to really genuinely appreciate everything in my life. And gratitude. I think having a lot of gratitude is also a piece of that. Appreciating what I have and also making room for new and different and whatever's next to come. Yeah. But happy, joy, and free is the short answer.
Wow.
I could talk about this for a long time. I'm like, it's a really good question. It is, But yeah, that's where I'm headed. Happy, joy, and free.
I love that. And it's really about, cutting through all the things, being reflective and finding resolve within yourself, right? It's just like a statement. It's not, a continuous journey question. It's just a statement that I'm finding resolve within myself and keeping that intention, whatever that looks like, however messy that looks like, however imperfect that looks like, you're making progress to having resolve. And that's amazing if we can make that the goal, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. This has been a wonderful conversation with you, Amy. Thank you so much for coming on today and talking about all these different, ideas and topics. And I just appreciate you coming on, and we'll recap what we talked about today, which your identity isn't tied to your profession. And it's not conflict resolve. Rather, it's transformation to positive peace. Progress is not linear. And being reflective is vital to achieve inner positive peace and outer positive peace in this world. So thank you again, Amy, for coming on and sharing us all your wisdom and your experience and your thoughts. So I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great chat and gave me lots to think about and reflect on, and it was wonderful hearing about your experiences as well. I appreciate it. Thanks.
And so if anyone wants to get in touch with you regarding real estate questions or just something that resonated with them about your story, how can people reach you?
You can email me is probably the easiest way, amycoxrealestate@gmail.com, AMYCOX amycoxrealestate@gmail.com. No periods, no punctuation, just all one word, Amy Cox Real Estate. And I'd love to hear from anybody that wants to share.
Fantastic. If you want to learn more about my consulting programs, purchase my book, or have me speak at your next event, visit blaisehunter.com. I do have a free offer for everyone. When we feel lost in the day and when we're driving, what do? We Google Maps that stuff. So why not go to the map to find peace and balance? I have a free video on my free offers tab, a guide to get you back to peace and balance when you're feeling anxiety and overwhelm. Head to my website, claim that offer. That's it for this week's episode. Challenge yourself to be vulnerable, lean into the difficulties, and have those open conversations so we can rise up as the heroes of our lives and let us breathe fire together. If you've enjoyed this show, please subscribe and support Blaise the Trail podcast. Reviews are always welcome and very much appreciated. Thanks for listening. I'm Blaise Hunter.
You've been listening to Blaise the Trail with Blaise Hunter. To learn more about how you can breathe fire and unleash the hero within, or to listen to past episodes, visit blaisehunter.com.